So first off, welcome to the Renting in the Amsterdam Metropolitan area. My name is Mary. I've been working at Expat Housing Network for almost 3 years now, and I'm the operations officer, and I'll be your host this evening. There will be a time for Q&A at the end, so if you've got any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to pop them down in the Q&A below. Of course, if you want to put them in the messages, that's fine, but if you pop them in the Q&A, then they'll all be together, so it just might make everything a bit more streamlined. So let's go. So first I'll quickly go through the contents that I'll be talking about tonight. First off, we'll talk about what type of apartment might suit your needs, where you might want to live, the general cost of living in Amsterdam and the metropolitan area, resources that'll help you search the market, the types of contracts that we work with here in the Netherlands, and some things to consider, and some of our top tips, as well as our process should you decide that you'd want our service for relocating to the Netherlands. First, we'll talk about the Amsterdam housing market. Now, here are some words that you might have seen used to describe the housing market: that the houses might be small, it's very expensive, it's ruthless, it's fast, there are mice, it's very difficult to maneuver. And yes, all of these are very true. There are ways around it, there are ways to maneuver it, so don't get too overwhelmed. I will help you through that. But these are all true, but like I said, there are ways around it. First off, I'm going to talk to you guys about why the market is so competitive here. So out of the 100% of houses in Amsterdam, 54% of these are regulated rental sector, which I would say is similar to social housing. So there's a base rent of €752 maximum. There's a waiting list of 10 to 14 years, and there's a maximum salary requirement as well. So this is for, like I said, it is social housing and not available to expats. Whereas there is the 46% below, which you can see is the free sector. Now this is what would be known as, like I said, the free sector, where the rent is not regulated and the landlords can charge as much as they would like, but of course it needs to be in line with the market, because if they were to charge a ridiculous amount, then no one would want to rent their property. Of that 46% of the free sector, 90% of that is already privately owned and inhabited, which leaves us, the expats, that little 10% that is available for us to rent. So this can give you an image as to why the market is so competitive and why the rent is quite expensive here, especially in the city, and why it moves so quickly. This is just another visual to show what we've just discussed. So here is the 239,000 regulated rental homes, 194,000 privately owned sector homes, and then of that, only 19,458 properties are available to rent. So that little orange section there. I'll walk you through the main types of apartments that you'll see on the rental market here. Here there are three main types of rental apartments. We'll start in the top left, and that is the shell apartment. And as you can see from that, it is quite literally a shell. You would need to come in and put the floorings in yourself. Sometimes the walls are plastered and already painted, but sometimes you might need to plaster and paint the wall yourselves, and you'll need to get all of the units in. And it's, like I said, it's very much a shell for you to do with it what you will. Now, there are pros and cons to this, of course. The cons are it takes longer to feel at home because you need to set up everything yourself. But the pros are the rent is significantly cheaper. Most of the time, the deposits will be lower as well. And also, there's very, very little chance that you'll have any of the deposit taken away from you at the end of the tenancy, because there won't be any damage to actually do throughout your tenancy. So if you're looking to rent somewhere for a cheap rent, but for very long term, I would say a shell apartment would be quite suitable to your needs. But if you're just looking to rent for a couple of years before you maybe moving on or looking to buy, then perhaps the shell might be too much of a hassle to move into at the beginning. The second type of property I'll mention now is the unfurnished apartment, which you'll see in the bottom left. Now, as you can see, it's already finished. It's got the floors done, the walls are done, it's got the kitchen already in. The only thing it doesn't have is furniture. Something to bear in mind when it comes to unfurnished apartments, most of the time they will not come with light fixtures either. They'll have all the wirings ready, but you'll need to pop in your own light fixtures, and as well as curtains. And then also, of course, your bigger furniture, so your beds, your chairs, your tables. But it is ready to just be decorated and made to feel more at home. Now, the third type of apartment that I'll talk about is the furnished apartment. And as it says on the tin, it is a completely fully furnished apartment. Most of the time they have crockery for you as well as bed sheets. So all you need to do is bring your suitcase and you're ready to live in the Netherlands. Something that I find with furnished apartments is, yes, they are super duper convenient, but it will never fully feel like your home because it essentially feels like you're living in an Airbnb. So I do think it's great if you're just moving here, maybe for a year and then moving away, or wanting to look for another place. When I personally moved here, I rented a fully furnished apartment, ended up living there for a year and a half before finding this now unfurnished rental property. But it was really good to find our feet and to kind of look around the neighborhoods and feel already at home without fully knowing Amsterdam to begin with. Now, we'll talk about the neighborhoods and where you might want to live and the distances from Amsterdam city centre. So when you look at the map, Amsterdam does look quite big, but something that you really need to remember and that I tell all of our clients is that ultimately Amsterdam is very small and you can actually cycle from one end of the city to the other within 45 minutes. So even though it looks quite large and spread out, everything is really quite compact. So you're never that far away from the center. And now here we're going to spread out a bit more and go and discuss the Amsterdam metropolitan areas and the surrounding cities. So something that I'd like to say is when you live in Amsterdam, the rent is extremely high because you are really paying to live in Amsterdam. But what this slide is to mention is the surrounding cities are cheaper to live in and still really easily accessible to the city centre of Amsterdam. So for example, Haarlem, which is also known as the mini Amsterdam, it's got all of the charm, but it's got the canals and the beautiful old buildings, but it just doesn't have the tourists. It is becoming increasingly popular, so it is a bit more expensive than it used to be, but this is only a 15-minute train ride directly to the city centre of Amsterdam. Hoofddorp as well, 25 minutes. The rent is quite cheap there as well. Amstelveen, you'll see that there are two times there. So from the direct border of Amstelveen, which borders Amsterdam and Amstelveen, to the city centre, it's 20 minutes. And from the other side of Amstelveen, then it's 40. So it's always just a maximum of 40 minutes to get to Amsterdam. Almere, which looks quite far away, 30 to 40 minutes, and Hilversum, which looks even further away, is only 20 minutes by train. So if you are looking to move to the Netherlands and want to kind of save a little bit more and probably have more options to look for in properties, try and have a look on the surrounding cities. You might have more choice. Speaking of costs, we will now discuss the costs of living in the Amsterdam metropolitan area. So these here are some rough guidelines that we've seen on the market, depending on the city in which you live in and depending on the size and the number of bedrooms that you are looking for at a property. So here you can really see the difference by what I was saying when I was mentioning that when you live in Amsterdam, you're really paying to live in the city. So for example, a studio, it's essentially just one big room. It's an open plan room, which includes the kitchen, bed, and all of that. Obviously the bathroom is private, but the rest of it is all open plan. That can vary from 1100 to 1350 in Amsterdam, whereas in Zaandam, for example, 650 euros to 850 euros. So just thinking about that, that's almost 50% price drop. And then again, moving up as well to a one bedroom for Amsterdam, it's from 1350 to 1900. And then again, let's move to Almere, for example, 900 to 1100. And this goes up and up and up. So like I said, if you are looking to kind of budget a bit more on your rent and want to have a bit more choice, then try and look outside of the city of Amsterdam. Also, I'd just like to mention that these are, of course, indications, but these are a good average that we've seen on the market and with the work that we do. So you might have the odd anomaly, but these are just a good benchmark to start thinking about. Additional costs for you to think about. So first we'll talk about the deposit, which is held by the landlord. When I first moved here, I thought that felt very suspicious to me. I had just moved from the UK and there were deposit protection holding schemes in the UK, whereas here it's held directly by the landlord. And that is just the way it is. So if you're signing a contract and they ask that you give the deposit directly to the landlord, that is the norm. We do wish that we could have a deposit holding scheme here, but at the moment, sadly, that's just not the way it is yet. So deposits are usually between one month's worth of rent to 3 months worth of rent, but most of the time it is the value of 2 months worth of rent. I'd say probably about 80% of the time. For perhaps maybe if you were going for a shell, then it might be 1 month's worth of rent because there's less to damage. Whereas on the flip side, if you went for a super luxury property, perhaps, or if you had lots of pets, for example, then the landlord might ask for 3 months worth of rent, but always just be prepared for 2 months. That's the general standard that we find here. Something else that's good to note, so you will have to pay over the deposit as well as the first month's rent before you can actually get your keys to your property and check into your property. So so just be prepared to have 3 months worth of rent to be able to pay directly. If you're going to be making an international payment as well, please make sure in mind that this does need to be paid before you move into your property. So if there's any time to make the international transfer, make sure to take that into account as well. Moving on to utilities. So for gas, water, and electrics, this is something that you can kind of manage yourself depending on your usage, of course, but this is approximately about 100 and 150 euros per month. So of course you can control this depending on the amount of water that you use, depending on how warm you like your house. It's something that you can control. And then of course there's the TV and internet. This is approximately between 50 and 100 euros a month. This of course is also dependent on the package that you choose. But it varies between 50 and 100 euros a month. And then moving onwards to municipality taxes, this is only a once a year annual payment, and this is for water cleanliness, waste disposal, just general municipality taxes. Now these numbers do vary depending on the municipalities or depending on the cities that you live in, but this gives you a very good benchmark of what to expect. So for a one-person household, currently in Amsterdam, it's 499 euros a year. And for a 2+ person household, it's 721 euros per year. Something that's good to note is you can either pay this off in one fell swoop, or you can actually pay it off in a monthly payment scheme. The municipality and the government is very flexible, I'd say, with how you pay this back, but they just want to make sure that you make your payments on time. So you can always request that. Just wanted to let you know as well, these are the numbers for 2021, and these are the numbers in Amsterdam. But like I said, they do vary a little bit depending on the cities that you are, the cities that you're in. But this is a good benchmark, and just to prepare yourself. Now we'll talk about some resources that might be able to help you search the market. Oh, sorry, speaking too much. I need a bit of water. So first we'll talk about the search platforms. So there's Pararius and Funda. So Pararius is predominantly rental, hence huurwoning, that means rental properties, whereas Funda is more predominantly for buying properties, but there are some rentals on there as well. So feel free to have a look through those. You can sort out filters, so that's obviously very helpful to help you find your home as well. There are also housing corporations and funds and investors. Now, something that I'd like to let you guys know about if you wanted to go through one of these is it's a lot harder to secure a property in a timely fashion with these, because obviously with corporations and investors, they have vast amounts of properties, and a lot of the time they don't really look at the potential tenant's profile. It's more taken out of a lottery, in a lottery fashion, as in first come, first served. And there's not as much control of how you can actually secure your property with them. And also, like I said, it can take longer because they just have so many properties, and they're just very aware that they're just there to kind of make money. There are also social platforms on which you can find your houses as well. Please, of course, beware of scams. I'll be talking about a little bit more about that a little bit later. But if you are searching for rooms or properties via Craigslist, Facebook, or Kamernet, then please just make sure that you can register at your property, and please make sure that the landlord is aware that you are moving in. So just make sure that you're not getting into a sublet. I will say this is the first time that I'll say it here in this presentation, but I'm sure I'll talk about it again. If you cannot register at a property, it is illegal, and you cannot live there. That's a big red flag if you cannot register at the property. When it comes to housing agents, these are some that we work with quite a lot and we trust. So there's JLG Real Estate, HB Housing Makelaardij, the Interhouse, EHN Services, Koops Makelaardij, Noordstate and Boersma. So like I said, we've done quite a few deals with these agents. They will have their properties on Pararis and Funda, but then you can also just go directly to them if that's what you would like. And now, if you are a young professional who's looking to find a flatmate, to find a sharer with, and then for you to kind of go on the housing search process together, Expat Housing Network has put together a social platform called Tenant Hub. So basically you'll go on there, you'll fill in your criteria. So essentially the start date in which you would like to check in. You'll say a little bit about yourself, and from there you're going to match up with other people with similar criteria for you. From there you can maybe find a flatmate and then look for a house together. So if you just didn't want to move directly into a house share, if you wanted to find your own flat with your flatmate, then Tenant Hub might be able to help you out there. Speaking of house shares, let's talk about apartment sharing. So the local law here prohibits the sharing of an apartment by more than 2 unrelated adults. So of course, if you're a family, the rules don't matter. This is more for young professionals. If you are unrelated, then most of the time you will not be able to share with more than 2 people. Now, the reason for this is because if a landlord wants to allow his house to be shared with by more than 2 people, they have to buy a specific license. And a lot of landlords just don't want to spend that money. So this brings me back to the registering, like I'd mentioned earlier. So 2 people will be allowed to register at a property unless the landlord has purchased this license, in which case more than 2 people will be able to. So please just make sure that you can register, especially if you are looking to share with more than 2 people, make sure that you can all register. Now, if you're renting room in an existing rental, again, you have to make sure that you register, and you have to make sure that you have permission from your landlord. Because, for example, you just don't want to get caught up in a sublet where someone might have a room spare in their house and is just looking to lower the cost of their rent by getting in a roommate. That is illegal. So please make sure that you do talk to the landlord before moving in if you are getting into a similar situation, and please make sure that you can again register. And then another thing, as I mentioned briefly earlier, was Tenant Hub. In order to avoid scams, or a way for you to avoid scams would be by finding another flatmate and then going on to finding a property together rather than just moving into a house. So feel free to have a look at Tenant Hub. Now I'm going to walk you through the main types of rental contracts that we abide by here in the Netherlands. So the first one, the definite contract, which is a maximum of 2 years, is also known as the Model B contract here. So like I said, this is a maximum of 2 years, a maximum of 24 months. But the good thing about this contract is that there's no minimum time period. You only have to give 1 month's calendar notice before you can leave. So if you're looking for a property and you're not entirely sure if you'll want to stay here long term, or if you're unsure in your position with your job and you're not sure if they're going to keep you on, or you're just unsure if you want to stay in that neighborhood, then perhaps a Model B contract would be more suitable to you, because then you can break the lease with 1 calendar month's notice. But like I said, it is a maximum of 2 years. The second type of contract we'll talk about now is the indefinite contract, and that is when it's a minimum of 1 year. But then the good thing about that is after that 1 year, the contract goes automatically monthly rolling, and you can stay there indefinitely. It's very, very difficult to be evicted here. Something that I found anyway when I moved here. It's a lot more, the tenants' rights are a lot more respected here than, for example, in the UK. It's a lot more a landlord's market, whereas here it's very difficult to be evicted unless you have a huge breach of contract or you stop paying rent. So just to be aware, if you wanted to have an indefinite contract, you can stay there indefinitely, but it is, like I said, a minimum of 1 year. If you were to leave the property within that 1 year, then there most probably will be a fine, and it can be up to the amount of the remaining amount that you would have paid for that year. So it's just worth staying there anyway. Here are some other things to consider. First off, are you a smoker? Something that's good to know is it's absolutely illegal to smoke inside any buildings here, any rental properties. So if you're a smoker or you enjoy having parties, whenever we may be able to have parties again, and you've got some friends who like to have a cigarette here and there, then it might be worth trying to find somewhere with an outside space. It's just something for consideration because, like I said, it's illegal to smoke inside a rental property here. The second we'll talk about is pets. So with pets, it can be a bit more difficult to get a rental property secured. Now, the reason for this is because it is the landlord's choice, and as the market is so competitive, a landlord might prefer to have a tenant without a pet. But there are some ways around this, of course. So say, for example, if you wanted to go for an unfurnished property, they're far more likely to allow you to have a pet than if you went for a furnished property. The reason for this is because the landlords want to make sure that their furniture might not be scratched up or they might not have cat hair. Now, of course, it's difficult because I have a cat myself and I do wish pets were allowed and welcomed everywhere, of course, but it does make sense that the landlord would be more protective and might prefer to go for a person without a pet. So if you are looking to bring over your pets, look for an unfurnished property, and then you might also be able to get a pet clause put into the contract as well. Moving on to children, of course, which are probably more important than pets, is something to consider is that over here, children have to start going to school from the age of 4. So if you're about to start moving over with a child who's about to turn 4 years old, then it might be a case of wanting to look for a school before looking for a property. Now, the reason I say this is because over here, you're not necessarily guaranteed to have a space in the school just because you live within the neighborhood. It's about how much space is left in the class. So it might be an idea to secure, like I said, secure your children's school before finding the property. And then this can save you long daily bike rides, unless you like that, of course. But if you do want to be local to the school, I think it's best to kind of work backwards in that sense. And then the fourth thing, of course, is budget. Now, over here in the Netherlands, we abide by a general rule called the 3 times rule. And this rule essentially says that your gross monthly income, including the 8% holiday pay if you're eligible for that, it should be 3 times the value of your rent. Now, the reason for this and the idea behind it is a third of your salary should go onto rent. A third should go on necessities like food, healthcare, bills, etc. And then the third part should just be for recreational use. So that's the thought behind it. So when you're deciding your budget on a rental property, do keep that in mind. But it's also good to know that you should probably look just within your budget. So say, for example, if you had a very, very high monthly salary and you were looking for a very low budget property, the landlord and agent might not be willing for you to get that property because they can see that you can afford more, and so they'd be saving that property for someone who might not be able to afford it. And then likewise, of course, if your budget does not fit in with 3 times rule and you're trying to overshoot and go for a very expensive property, the likelihood of that being a successful offer is also very slim. So just have a think about your budget and just try and work within that, of course. Now, here are some top tips from us, things that us as expats, we wish we'd known before we moved to the Netherlands. So if registering is not possible, it's a sublet, and please steer clear. Written offers that are accepted are legally binding once they have been accepted, and you can be fined for backing out. Now, because of this, we would never suggest that you put more than 1 offer on a property at the same time. Because if you were to put 2 offers on and they were both to be accepted at the same time, the chances are you will probably be fined for having to back out of one of them. So only put 1 offer on at a time. Something else I'd like to mention about this point as well is if you were to submit your offer, and if you wanted to submit 2 offers, let's say, and then one of them got accepted before the other, then you can, of course, call the agent and retract your offer before it's been accepted, and then that would be fine. But once it's been accepted, it's legally binding. So just be aware of that. The third one, as I've touched on earlier, landlords can't simply evict you, so know your rights. And by that, just stick to your contract and just be a good tenant, and there's hardly any chance that you'd be evicted. When it comes to the maintenance in your rental property, the minor and major repairs, the general rule is anything up to €100 is the tenant's responsibility. Anything more than that and anything structural will be for the landlord or the agent to take care of, while the property manager. But when it comes to little repairs, for example, maybe light bulbs, for example, then that would be the tenant's responsibility. Another thing to know now is also that rent can be increased yearly if it's mentioned in the contract. So do look out for that. It is mostly mentioned in the contract, of course, but just please be mindful of it. And most of the increases are regulated and linked to inflation. So just to let you know, the rental increase is with a maximum increase of 2.4 for the next 3 years. So say, for example, in your contract, if it were to say there's going to be an increase of 1.2%, then the next time they would say, oh, we want to increase it another 1.2%, then that would be absolutely fine because it would equal to 2.4%. But if they were to say we want to increase it by another 3%, that wouldn't be allowed because you can only have a maximum increase of 2.4%. Another thing to consider is taking out liability insurance, home contents insurance, and legal insurance. Of these three, I would really strongly recommend definitely at least getting the liability insurance. Now this costs about €3.60 per person, depending on where you go. But yeah, like I said, €3.60 per person per month. And then this will cover you for any damage that happens, essentially. So say, for example, if you were cycling and then you accidentally cycled into a parked car and dented their door, the liability insurance would have you covered for €3.60 a month. So definitely consider getting that. The final thing that we'll mention at this point is maculars. They're known as maculars here, but real estate agents, they shouldn't be charging you a fee unless you have specifically asked for their help. You might occasionally see someone ask for a key handover fee or a viewing fee. Now, essentially what this means for the key handover fee is that they would be asking you for a fee literally just to give you the key to the property. And the viewing fee is they might ask you to pay a fee simply to view the property, even if you don't know if you want to get it. Now, these are not allowed. So if they try and ask for you to pay for a key handover or to do a viewing, just say no, that's not allowed. They will only ask for a fee, and they should only ask for a fee if you have specifically requested for their services. Here are some useful links for you guys to have a look through as well. So here's the municipality. In Dutch, we call it the gemeente. This is where you can register your address and pay taxes. I know it's not the most fun thing to do or the most fun thing to think about, but it's something that is absolutely mandatory. So this is something for you to look at. Then there's in Amsterdam, which is where you can register and get your BSN number. So the BSN number is essentially your social security number. And then you will need to get that linked to the address at which you register. So in Amsterdam is great for expats. They all speak English there. So if you want to look for somewhere to register, look at that. You can also register at your local municipality as well. So you can just have a Google registering in Amsterdam or Amstelveen, and then they're very helpful links, and then they'll help you set that up directly. There's the third link that I'll talk about now is the IND, which is the immigration department. So this can help you with your V number. It's the immigration department. I don't know how else to clarify that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And then the fourth link that I'll mention now is Woon. So Woon is an institute for questions, complaints, and everything that you want to know about renting. So it is a non-profit, and you can just go on this website, and if you've got any doubts about something that your landlord might be asking you, if you're not sure if it's legal, you can go directly to Woon and they'll help you out. So that's a very useful one to keep in mind. I'll walk you through the packages that we can provide for our clients. So there are three main types of packages that we have. So there's the basic package. So the basic package would include an access to a rental expert, and now this will be your go-to person throughout the entire process. You can ask them any questions, you can call them, WhatsApp them, send them a message or an email, and they will be there to help you throughout. We will provide you with guides and checklists. So even though you will be going on your viewings alone, for example, and you'll be doing your house search alone, you will still feel supported because you'll have our guides and checklists on how exactly to do your searches and viewings and your check-in. So you'll still feel supported, but from afar. And then once you've found a property that you would like to view, that you'd like to put an offer on, we will then submit that offer on your behalf. We'll draft it up, of course, with your confirmation, and then we will send that through on your behalf, and we'll put together a little portfolio about you guys as well. And then we'll also review your contract for you once the offer has been accepted. So we'll just make sure that the contract is legal and as it should be before you do any signing. And we'll also set up your utilities for you on your behalf, of course, under your name and your new address. The price of this package is €599. That's already including VAT. We do request a deposit of €99 for this package, which is then deducted from the final fee at the end. Now, the Smart package is the second one up. It's got everything that I've just discussed in the basic package, apart from you'll have a bit more support in that you will have your intake with your expat rental manager, who will get all of the details and criteria for which you're looking for in your home. And we will put together a search sheet for you, and we will search the market on your behalf. We'll share this search sheet for you, and from that sheet, you can choose which properties you would like to view, at which point we will schedule the viewings on your behalf and make sure that the agent knows that you are working with Expat Housing Network. And then we'll again send you off to your viewings with some guides and checklists. So again, you know exactly what to look for, what to ask for. That package is €999, already including VAT, of course. And for this one, we require a deposit of €199 at the beginning of the process, which is then deducted from the final invoice. And the third and final package, this is the complete package. This is the full support where we are physically with you. So similar to the Smart, we will do the search for you, we'll schedule the viewings, but we will attend the viewings for you, and we will also attend the check-in with you as well. Something that we've also started doing now due to the coronavirus is we found that a lot of people would prefer to arrive and move directly into their property instead of doing a 10-day quarantine and then moving into their rental property. So with that in mind, we can actually do the whole thing virtually on your behalf as well. So, but this would only be with the complete package. So by that, we would be doing video viewings on your behalf, either live or pre-recorded, whichever would be best suited to you. And we'd also attend the check-in on your behalf as well. Make sure everything is recorded so you're not held liable for scuff on the wall, for example. And then again, we can either do that live or pre-recorded. Pre-recorded and then send it to you, of course. And then from there, once you arrive in the Netherlands, we just need to find a way to, or figure out a time to just hand you over the keys and you can move directly in. Now, the cost of this package is €1,999, already including VAT. And for this package, we require a €299 deposit, which is then deducted from the final cost at the end. If you're looking to buy, we do have another rental webinar, a buying webinar coming up with our buying team. So there is Buying in the Netherlands, which is held on the 3rd of June, and it is similar to this. It is done once a month. You can find all of the details on our website or via Eventbrite. But we do, if you want something a bit more bite-sized, we have recently started a lunch and learn session, which is just a half-hour session with our managing director, who is also the main buying, the buying professional. And it's a half-hour session where it is a Q&A and a presentation. It's just held during lunchtime, and it's held every Friday. You can find more details about that on our website as well. I was Mary. I hope you found this helpful. I'll start moving on to the Q&As very shortly, but I just want to reiterate as well that this has been recorded and it will be sent to you. So if you're thinking back like, oh, I wish I'd remembered something, have no fear, you'll be able to rewatch it in your own time as well. And if you've got any further questions that you forgot to mention in the Q&A that's about to start, then you can also just send us through an email to welcome@ehn.works. All right, let's move on to the Q&A. There's someone in the chat. Hi, Neri. So Neri says, awesome information. I also wonder if we are able to propose a discount for the rent price, or we are supposed to propose a higher offer for the apartment, or is it exactly the same rent price as it is on the website they offered? That's a really good question. So at the moment, there is very little room for negotiation, definitely not to go lower, unless we see that the property's been online for a couple of months, then there might be the opportunity to go lower, but most of the time you can't negotiate, and you should not, or we really advise against putting up a higher price for multiple reasons. A, because if the property is priced at that value, that is what it should be priced at. You shouldn't have to haggle for it. And B, by increasing the price, it could then mean it could kind of snowball, and then everyone would start kind of trying to increase the price of the rent, which might just make the rental market a bit more difficult to maneuver. So always just try and go for the normal asking price when it comes to renting, unless otherwise advised, but that is quite rare to come by. I hope that answered your question. Michelle would like to know, how long in advance should I start to look for a rental property? That's a really good question, because obviously it does depend on what's available on the market, and it depends also when you're looking to start renting. But I'd say safely, if you want to start, probably a month before, because it does move very quickly. But it's always good to kind of be able to dip your toes into the searching before it actually starts becoming a stressful, time-dependent situation. So I'd say probably a month before will give you enough time to start searching in a kind of calmed, not too overwhelming way. But as you grow closer to the date, of course, in which you'd like to move, it will become faster and faster. But I do think it's best to be able to dip your toes into the rental market before having to really go full throttle. I hope that helped. And now Vikas says hi. I'm wondering if the question will come, because I see there was a comma. Vikas, here we go. Vikas this side, nice information and in detail. I have a small query on the increase in the rent price for over 3 years, which I understood is max 2.4% can be consumed in 3 years, right? Yes, that's correct. So it's just a maximum of 2.4, so it can be split up, if you see what I mean. So as in they can't say 2.4 each year. It's just a maximum of 2.4 within 3 years. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, cool, great. I'm glad to hear it. And let's just see if there's any more. All right, if there are no more questions, okay, this bit always makes me, I just want to make sure I don't end this too quickly. But if you have any further questions, of course, please feel free to send through an email. We're more than happy to help, or we can also schedule a quick call as well. So feel free to, just let us know if we can be of any service. I hope this was useful to you guys, and I wish you the best of success. Oh, Michelle, sorry. If you want to arrive and then search for a rental once there, is it best to stay in a hotel or Airbnb and then search while you're there, as you mentioned that the min rental is 1 year? I would say, personally, I think it's always best to be able to go and view the properties yourself. I think finding temporary accommodation is the best way forward. Now, there are some temporary apart hotels, serviced apart hotels that you can go by, and they can either have a monthly rate or go by weekly rates. But if you wanted to get temporary accommodation, we don't specialize in it, but I can absolutely let you know of some that we are aware of. So there's Hotel Janssen, spelled Jansen, Zoku as well, which is absolutely beautiful. It's award-winning, and yeah, that's just a lovely place to stay. And there's also the Student Hotel. Now it's called the Student Hotel, but it's not specifically for students, but it's just a kind of short-term apart hotel stay. I would, like I said, recommend if you can get temporary accommodation when you come to visit, before searching, do try and get that. And then also it allows you to kind of visit the neighborhoods as well to really make sure that you know where you might want to live. I hope that helps you out. Hi, Joanna. Hi. No worries about joining late. I've got a lot of rain coming home from work. Oh, I know the weather's been awful, hasn't it? It's almost June and it feels like it's October. But yes, Joanna would like to ask, is it possible to rent for short periods, let's say 4 months with registration? When it comes to renting with 4 months, like I said, there is obviously the Model B contract, at what point you can register, and then you can break the contract within 1 month's notice. So that 1 month's calendar notice. So that is an option to go for if you want to go for Model B. But then there are also the apart hotels, which I just mentioned, that you can register at. So you can register at Hotel Janssen and stay there for a couple months. And you can register also at the student hotel as well and stay there for a couple of months. I hope you found that helpful. But yeah, if you did want to find a private rental that you can register at for short term, then you can go for a Model B. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it just because it is going through a lot of contracts and paperwork for such a small period of time. I think the Model B is better for as a kind of safety net for if you need to leave. But if you're looking just for a short term let, then I would say try and find some temporary accommodation. I hope that was helpful. You're welcome, Michelle. If there are any more questions, here we go. Okay, you're so welcome, Joanna. Again, if you do want a quick call at some point, feel free to send me through an email. I'm more than happy to kind of walk you through maybe timelines. It's also a thing to think about at this point. Hopefully, the quarantining will be abolished shortly. But it's just good to think about if you're moving over soon, then you might need to take into account an extra 10 days of quarantine. I mean, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Okay, cool. That would be great. It would be lovely to meet you. All right. If there are no more questions, then I will bid you all a lovely evening. And yes, I wish you all the best success in your relocations. And I'm sure you're going to have a great time when you're here. Ooh, actually, oh, I see one in the chat. Sorry. Carol's just asked, if a couple has a high salary for both of them, does the same rule of 30% maximum salary apply? Can we access to lower rent properties? Now, of course, absolutely. So it's a 3% rule. And not 3%, sorry, the 3 times rule. But you can have access to lower rents, but then you might but people might be preferred. So people with a lower salary might be more preferred for that. But you can, of course, try to go for the lower rents, but just be mindful that you might not get accepted. Someone who might not be able to afford more might get priority over you. But there's never any harm in trying. I hope that helped, Carol. All right. With that, I bid you guys a nice evening. Thank you all for joining. I really hope. Fotis, hi, sorry. Do we pay the fee after we have secured a place? Yes, absolutely. So for the fee, I'm assuming you're talking about our fee. The fee invoice is only sent over once you've checked into your property and once the utilities have been set up. And so once that is then completed, then you'll have a 30-day payment period from that point as well. I hope that helped. You're welcome. And Carol, what neighborhoods do you recommend near Amsterdam? Ooh, it depends what you're looking for. That's the thing. I mean, obviously there are the ones that are really, really popular at the moment. De Pijp, the Jordan, that's beautiful. I really like Old West and South as well. Maybe stay away from Zuidoost. I mean, it's not bad. It's just this is just personal opinion, but it does really depend on the lifestyle that you're looking for. At this point, the reasons I mentioned these neighborhoods were because they're ones that I personally would love to live in, but it does depend also on your lifestyle. And outside of Amsterdam, what neighborhoods, in addition to Carol's question, what do you recommend for the family? Sure thing. So when it comes to outside of Amsterdam, outside of Amsterdam, I mean, Rotterdam is becoming very popular at the moment, as is Utrecht and Eindhoven as well. They're all very popular. I have to say, I do specialize in Amsterdam, but from what I've noticed, I've had quite a few clients coming in asking to be able to find properties in Rotterdam, Utrecht, and Eindhoven. So those are ones to look at as well. Again, they're very easy to commute to as well. And then for Vikas, he's saying, in addition to the Carol question, what would you recommend for the family? For the family, I'd say probably Buitenveldert. So that's in Amstelveen. I think that's really good for families. I would steer clear of the city center because it does feel a bit pokey. The apartments are a bit smaller. But if you're looking for a bit more space and more of a modern take, Buitenveldert and Amstelveen will, I think, be a very good bet for you. Also, it's really nice. There's a beautiful forest there, the Amsterdamse Bos. It's like 3 times the size of Central Park. Absolutely gorgeous. I think a big hidden secret of Amsterdam. But for families, I think that's a great area to live. And there's also the international school in Amstelveen as well. So that's also good for families as well. Just hold on a couple more minutes just in case of any more questions. Okay, I think that's it. If there are any more questions that come to mind, please feel free to send them through via email. Like I said, I'm more than happy to help you, and we will be sending this video out to you guys so you can have another look through, get some more information if you'd like. Again, thank you so much for joining. I hope you found this useful, and I wish you the greatest success in your relocation. Bye. You're so welcome. You're so welcome, Johanna. Have a great evening. Bye now.